That night was a very long night. I'm thinking at that point, I hope we don't sink, because I knew the extent of the damage. I'd been down and taken a look at it, and I knew that we were in bad, bad shape. We had a lot of dead folks, a lot of gravely wounded folks on that ship, including the captain, who toward the end of the shift, toward the end of the 15 hours, had regained consciousness and was sitting up in his chair, but not saying much, just sat.
Help was finally on its way. Ships from the 6th Fleet were steaming towards the Liberty and would reach her the next morning.
It was quite a sight to see so much of a flotilla there, the carriers. We looked and we said, God, what a flotilla. Where the hell were you? Why didn't you come? I mean, everybody aboard the ship said the same thing.
The Liberty was now heading to Malta for emergency repairs. An important visitor was helicoptered aboard. Admiral Isaac Kidd was leading a naval inquiry into the attack. His behavior surprised the sailors.
I thought he was a very strange person because he took his stars off and walked around, tried to walk around like a regular guy. You know, everybody knew who he was. But I thought that was rather strange. I didn't buy into that one real easy.
He took his eagles off, and he says, well, guys, he says, you just pretend that I'm one of you guys now. Tell me all about it. So they told what they seen in that, and after a while, he put his pins back on, and he says, I don't want you guys talking about this at all to anybody, to your shipmates. Don't be giving any interviews here while we're in Malta. He says, anything that has to be told through your division officer, through your captain, don't be talking to your family about it. I mean, he was very specific.
By this time, all the injured men had been taken aboard the rescue ships.
I remember being hauled up into that helicopter in a basket that had been wrapped tightly around me from head to toe. The corpsman, not knowing which end was up, sat on my head all the way back. And all I could think of was what an ignominious way to die after having survived a torpedo attack.
They took the wounded and the dead off and took them to the USS America, where we were then taken into their hospital area. That was when the Navy and the might of the United States Navy was really with us. Up until then, it hadn't been.
An unarmed American ship had been attacked by Israeli planes and boats. 34 sailors were dead, and the U.S. had done nothing to help. For the first time in 35 years, we can explain why. The theories cast light on the tangled web of American-Israeli relations. Some people suspect the ship might have been overhearing information on Israeli operations in the Sinai.
I think they intended to attack the ship. Exactly why they wanted to, I'm not sure. They may have felt we were, with the Liberty, we were listening in to some conversations and other things that were going on that they didn't want us to know about. And they had been engaged in some pretty outlandish stuff in the course of the war. And I didn't think they wanted us to know all the detail of that.
I don't think that we would have cared. America was not an enemy. There was nothing they could in any way involve us, threaten us, concern us. No. I don't even know what were the task of the Liberty. What their purpose? To find out how the war was going on? I don't know.
But there's a broader theory, that the attack was intended to be blamed on Egypt, and would therefore draw America into the war, and was carried out with the foreknowledge of certain people in Washington. The Liberty's captain had always suspected this was the case. In 1997, at Arlington Cemetery, he broke his 30-year silence.
For many years, I had wanted to believe that the attack on the Liberty was pure error. It appears to me that it was not a pure case of mistaken identity. I think that it's about time that the State of Israel and the United States government provide the crew members of the Liberty and the rest of the American people the facts of what happened and why it came about that the Liberty was attacked 30 years ago today.
Less than 2 years later, McGonigal himself would be buried at Arlington. Shortly before he died, he sent an open letter to President Clinton calling for Israel to acknowledge publicly that her armed forces had deliberately attacked the USS Liberty.
Captain McGonigal was more than just a captain in the Navy. He was a friend. He was a sailor's captain.
Towards the end of his life, McGonigal confided in his old friend, the chief engineer.
Captain and I was real close, and every time I'd see him while he was in the hospital, he would cry, and he called me a few years, 2 or 3 years before he died. He was going to be in Washington for me to come up there, and I sat in a room with him. We chatted a while, and then he got started telling me that those SOBs really did us in, George. And I said, what are you talking about?
McGonigal went on to say that if the Liberty had been sunk with all hands, the blame would naturally fall on Egypt and her Soviet backer.
We were guinea pigs to be sunk, and then we could say Egypt and Russia did it. That way the United States could have stepped right in and helped Israel.
We've found evidence that this was part of a larger plan hatched by Israeli and American intelligence to invade Egypt and overthrow Nasser, a plan codenamed Cyanide. A key figure was James Angleton, Israel's closest friend in the CIA, and unique beneficiary of a memorial from Mossad. Jim Ennis first came across cyanide almost by chance.
I had gone to the LBJ library asking for, all Liberty documents, and this one-page paper came out of nowhere. Minutes from the 303 committee.
The 303 committee was a secret group that used to meet at the old executive office building, round the corner from the White House.
303 committee was simply a device for examining covert operations of any kind and making a judgment on behalf of the president so he wouldn't be nailed with the thing if it failed.
Here in April 1967, the committee met to discuss a sensitive Defense Department project. It would involve the Liberty with a highly risky submarine operation to help Israel. Scribbled on the minutes is a note: submarine within UAR waters, another term for Egypt.
Especially the fact that this was in the Liberty file suggested that this had to do with the submarine that was near us and with cyanide and all the other things.
Dave Lewis had also heard about cyanide. One of his officers had told him the ship was carrying secret documents in connection with a submarine project.
He said, there are sealed orders in my safe.